Welcome. So today we're going to have another story time with Bruce. Bruce had a very interesting career, and we're going to hear a little bit about what he did for a living most of his life. Here's Bruce.
I worked in a mental hospital for 30 years, worked with the criminally insane, maximum security for about 15 and medium security for about 15. I was what was called at that time, at first I was called a psychiatric security aide, and then sometimes instead of getting a pay raise, they'd give us a new job title. So I've been, even all the same job, I've been a mental health therapist, a forensic psychiatric therapist, a psychiatric security aide, but basically it was working direct care on the ward, a job more fascinating than almost anybody else's job, really. I mean, I've seen and heard things that most people wouldn't ever. It was a job that was extremely violent at times. I had been in, over the 30 years, about 3,000 physical altercations, ranging from just someone who was resistive and we had to move him from one place to another to full-out combative. I've been stabbed a couple times, dislocated collarbone, got a metal plate in my neck, surgery on my wrist, all kinds of physical injuries. But fortunately, I was able to deal with that on an impersonal basis. It wasn't me, it would have been somebody else. Personally, I was only attacked maybe 50 or 100 times out of all those times. Mostly generally it involved breaking up fights between two other patients or that kind of thing. It was a job that people loved to hear about, oh, tell me stories, tell me stories. I'll tell you one real short, interesting one. Had a man in his early 30s named Charlie. Red hair, little low IQ, probably 90s, somewhere in there, who believed he was carrying the Christ child, that he was pregnant with the second coming of Christ. And one thing that you learn there very quickly is you don't try to out-logic a patient who has delusions. They spend their whole time, day, night, and everything, living their delusions, and they have pretty much answers for anything. You can't out-logic them. I had this relatively new female staff member who was pretty full of herself that, she could handle this kind of stuff, and she said, well, I'll show you with this pregnant guy. And so we just sat there and watched while she made a fool of herself. And she said, now, Charlie, I understand that you're carrying the Christ child. You're pregnant with the Christ child. And he said, yeah, that's right. And she said, how long have you been pregnant? And he said, a little over 7 years. And she thought, oh, I got it now. She said, don't you find it odd that you've been pregnant for 7 years and the gestation period is about 9 months? And he said, well, don't you find it odd that I'm a man and I'm pregnant? So she slunk away in her, oh, oops, I guess I am an idiot. And she was right, she kind of was. But anyway, there are hundreds upon hundreds of stories like that made the job kind of fun. I was playing chess with the same guy, and he wasn't particularly good at it. It was just fun for him, and so I would take it easy on him. One time we were playing, and I'd tell him, no, don't move there, Charlie, I'll take your queen. Don't do that, I'll take your queen. And then finally I got a little bored, and so I took his queen. And he said, man, you took my queen. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, for God's sakes, I'm locked up. Isn't that enough for you? Yeah, I guess so, Charlie. Another time, he accidentally made a decent move. And so I had to pause and kind of think about it. And he said that. He said, you're thinking about these moves, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He said, well, no wonder I'm losing. He was a source of fun. Some of them very sad folks. Had one little old boy who was only 29 or 30 and physically very frail. He'd had 15 or 20 major surgeries in his young life. And I felt bad for him. I mean, he really, and he was a little slow. His parents were both drug addicts, and but he blamed his father for his medical issues, because when she got pregnant, she quit using drugs, but his dad kept using the drugs, and that's how come he had all those medical problems.